President, thank you for the honor to serve the country. It's a great privilege you've given me. Clearly, we are engaged with our allies to ensure that they know where our common interests lie, what our expectations are, that America will continue to be a leader, but they must do more.
Mr. President, I'm privileged to be here, deeply honored, and I want to thank you for keeping your commitment to the American workers.
Mr. President, what an incredible honor it is to lead the Department of Health and Human Services at this pivotal time under your leadership. I can't thank you enough for the privilege that you've given me and the leadership that you've shown.
Mr. President, it's great to be here and celebrate this group. We are receiving, as you know, I'm not sure the rest of you fully understand the support with law enforcement all over America.
It's a new day at the United Nations. You know, we now have a very strong voice. People know what the United States is for, they know what we're against, and they see us leading across the board.
With your direction, we were able to also focus on the forgotten man and woman who are the folks who are paying those taxes. So I appreciate your support and your direction in pulling that budget together.
I'm thrilled to have a chance to help you live up to your campaign promises.
Good. Thank you, Wilbur.
Mr. President, last week was a great week. It was Infrastructure Week. Thank you so much for coming over to the Department of Transportation. Hundreds and hundreds of people were just so thrilled, hanging out, watching the whole ceremony. I want to thank you for getting this country moving again and also working again.
President, first of all, I apologize for being late for work. In about 4 months, I got bogged down in that swamp that you've been trying to clean.
On behalf of the entire senior staff around you, Mr. President, we thank you for the opportunity and the blessing that you've given us to serve your agenda and the American people, and we're continuing to work very hard every day to accomplish those goals.
Mr. President, it's been a great honor to work with you. Thank you for your strong support of HUD and for all others around this table that I've worked with. We're making tremendous progress.
This is a team you've assembled that's working hand in glove for the betterment of America. And I want to thank you for that. These are great team members, and we're on your team.
Thank you.
Acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker, please.
Sir, Mr. President, I will start by highlighting the fact that you stayed in Washington, D.C. over the holidays, giving up Christmas with your family, New Year's with your family, trying to bring an end to this shutdown and security to our southern border. While some members of Congress went on vacation and ignored the problem. You have demonstrated your dedication to delivering on this critical issue for our country and for the American people, but Congress has to act. They have to fund the wall. It is undeniable that a border wall improves the security of our southern border. A wall would reduce the flow of drugs, gangs like the violent MS-13, and criminals across our border, like you highlighted the brave officer who was a legal immigrant who was murdered by an illegal immigrant in California. It would reduce the incentives for individuals who attempt to enter illegally and restore integrity to our immigration system. Also, we need Congress, as Secretary Nielsen pointed out, to close the loopholes in our immigration laws. Not only do the loopholes in our laws frustrate DHS's ability to enforce our immigration laws, including the TVPRA and the judicial rulings that prevent DHS from detaining family units together, but these loopholes overwhelmingly contribute to a substantial number of meritless cases languishing in our immigration courts. During the shutdown and afterwards, the Department of Justice will continue to do everything within our power to support both DHS in its critical mission and address illegality at the border. Illegality will not go unchecked. We will continue to prosecute aliens for committing immigration-related crimes like illegal re-entry and illegal entry, which are at record levels for prosecution currently in your administration, and we will never let up. We will continue these efforts targeting transnational organized crime and criminal gangs like MS-13. The immigration courts are working. We have been completing cases at levels we haven't seen in years. We have over 400 immigration judges on board, and we are hiring more. And we are restoring the rule of law to our immigration court system. We will continue to do everything we can, and we are seeing tremendous progress, but the number of cases originating from the border are overwhelming the system. We will continue to defend our actions, your administration's actions, in federal court as well. This administration has taken strong action to restore legality to our immigration system, but advocates continue to try to frustrate us in federal courts. We will prevail. And finally, and I cannot stress this more, that we need Congress to act, to show up, to negotiate with you, and to solve these challenges that our country faces. The Department of Justice will work every day to support this administration, support DHS, support HHS, but we need Congress to do something instead of just going on vacation and avoiding the issue. We need Congress to fund the wall, fund the government, and close the loopholes in our laws. If Congress wants to have catch and release at the border and more drugs, gangs, and crime to come into our country, it can continue to refuse to provide the funds that we need to build the wall, and it can continue to refuse to close the loopholes in our immigration laws. That is the choice, sir.
Mr. President, honored to be on the team. This last week I had the great privilege to represent America in China at the Green Energy Ministerial. Good timing. They needed to hear why America was stepping away from the Paris Accord, and they did. My hat's off to you for taking that stand and for sending a clear message around the world that America is going to continue to lead in the area of energy.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you.
I think, Mr. President, your focus on this is really important. While I was the governor, I tried with very poor results to get the previous administration to recognize the lack of support that the state of Texas was getting, and we ran numerous operations along the border. Mr. Vice President, you, as the governor, we talked about it at Governor Association meetings about the challenge that we had with that 1,200-mile border. 2/3 of the border is, of course, with Texas and Mexico, and the United States and Mexico. But the challenge has always been the lack of support from Washington, D.C. To have a chief executive finally recognize that it's going to take Washington acting to address this issue is really heartening from my perspective, having basically been ignored for those 8 years as I was the governor in the previous administration. But it's this message that comes that from the media, from those that for whatever reason don't want to secure that border, that you can come and be rewarded. That's got to stop. And one of the ways to do that is obviously with a clear message to those that are trying to use that border as a access into the United States, is there's not a reward anymore. Don't come. When the summertime gets here, the humanitarian issue here, Mr. President, that all too often doesn't get talked about. I mean, the lives that are lost in Mexico, in the desert Southwest, in that region of Texas that is incredibly inhospitable, when you're out there trying to cross it. I mean, that's the heart-rending side of the story, Mr. President, that you're trying to address here. And, I know here over the course of the last couple of weeks, there's been some stories about young people who lost their lives, a couple of young people who lost their lives, and our hearts go out for them. But what about the literally hundreds of people who have died trying to cross that border because of the incentive that people have given them, all of these different incentives to come and penetrate that border? And you're standing up and saying, don't come. Don't put your family in jeopardy. I'd personally like to see the media really get, focused on those stories about what you're doing to stop that type of danger and frankly hostility to these individuals. Building that border security is the most powerful message that we can send. But the most powerful message is from the Chief Executive of the United States standing up and saying, Congress, you got a responsibility, a duty to protect and defend the people of this country. I'm sitting here ready to negotiate with you. I'm sitting here ready to find a solution to deal with this horrendous condition that we find in this country. All they need to do is come and sit down with you, Mr. President. I know where your heart is. I know where the people around this table's heart is. We're ready to find a solution to this issue of illegal immigration, of drug trafficking, of potential terrorist activity along that southern border. And we've got the expertise. All we need is the will from Congress to come, and we'll be more than happy to partner up with them and find a solution to this.
Thank you, Mr. President, and just the greatest privilege of my life is to serve as Vice President to a President who's keeping his word to the American people and assembling a team that's bringing real change, real prosperity, and real strength back to our nation.
Mr. Vice President, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. And having spent the Christmas break here in Washington along with you, I want to thank you for the strong stand you've taken for border security, not just because you said you would, but because, as the cabinet and the nation looking on today can see, you recognize that we have a crisis at our southern border. We think of the tragedy of Officer Singh, a legal immigrant to this country, being struck down by an illegal immigrant at the time of the Christmas holiday. We think of the videos that the American people woke up to today of a large assault on our border that required our Border Patrol to deploy tear gas. This is the information you hear every day, we are made aware of every day, but you bringing it before the American people and being willing to take a strong stand to shut down the government until we secure the funding to build a wall and bring about the kind of changes that will achieve true border security, I know is something that millions of Americans appreciate, and I personally appreciate your stand. You gave the numbers before, but they're worth repeating. 17,000 criminals have been apprehended attempting to come into this country. Since this administration took office, 235,000 criminal illegal aliens have been apprehended by Immigration and Customs Enforcement in this country. We think about the tragedy along the border that the secretaries both spoke about today, but we think of the human cost to the American people and our society by not addressing this issue in a meaningful way. Mr. President, you directed our entire team to reach out to Democrats in the Congress. We met several times before Christmas, and Mick Mulvaney and I traveled, and we met with Leader Schumer, and there we presented a good faith offer to resolve this issue, to achieve a principled compromise, only to find out days after Christmas that the Democrats had stopped negotiations altogether. They're coming here today at your invitation. Our sincere hope is that, confronted with these facts and with the information that we will review again today, is that Democrats on Capitol Hill will join Republicans and will join in your call to achieve real border security. And as you said yesterday, we're ready to deal. We have an offer on the table that would reopen the government and achieve border security. I know other senators are talking about fresh ideas, some of which you've reflected on today, and I know we'll give due consideration to those issues, but we owe the American people nothing less than our best efforts, not just to reopen the government, but as you've made clear, to reopen the government once we have the resources to build a wall, a physical barrier, and make measurable progress on achieving real border security.
Thank you very much. It's true.